Let's jump into Selma. This is the one I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast when I talked about one of the most underappreciated, incredible movies that I've seen in quite a long time. I remember watching this and being super freaking blown away by it and just in awe of capturing it. It really seemed like Ava brought Martin Luther King to life in this movie. It's crazy how this movie didn't get more recognition, because this one felt like one of those, biography type films and biographical type films that truly transcend the test of time and transcend anything we've seen with a character and with, like you said before, an American icon like Martin Luther King that did so much for so many people in this nation and in this world. To be honest, it's absolutely well handled, emotional, moving. It's smart, powerful. The performances are off the charts. It's just incredibly well directed. The visuals are crazy. Like, this movie's just nuts, man. It's just nuts the way they handle so many different issues within the civil rights movement and within what Martin Luther King did, and the way he went about it in a very authentic way. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, it felt real. It didn't feel like this bigger than life kind of biblical film where Martin Luther King is like this, Moses, like parting the Red Sea. Like, it felt like a real dude. It was just trying his hardest to do what he needed to do.
Yeah, no, it's not. This movie's very contained. I think that's probably what makes it so effective. It takes place in 1965 during the March of Selma, Alabama. This is a prominent piece of civil rights movement history, and they show you the context of it in the first couple of scenes in this film. Starting off with Oprah's character trying to go vote, and she's trying like multiple times to vote, and she keeps getting rejected. I think that, what was it, the guy says like how many judges we have, and then she's like 67, and then he says name them all or something like that. I'm like, what? But that's the conditions. And think about it, this was 1965, man. This wasn't like 18 something. This wasn't like 1910. Yeah. Like, this was 50 years ago, man. This is the conditions that people really put under. And I know a lot of people in the South. I mean, my grandma told me stories all the time. Before she moved to California, of like all of the different, trials and tribulations, all that kind of stuff. So it's just crazy, man. And I definitely think this film puts the conflict in the forefront in that respect. It also gives you context of another problem too, was the, we talked about in the Spike Lee episode with the 4 little girls being bombed in the church, at the very opening in Birmingham, Alabama. So it's like they show you those two things back to back to kind of give you the scope of what the issues are here, but very much focusing on the way that Martin Luther King and his team of civil rights movement activists pushed those issues to the forefront and marched and caused an upset across the country, bringing people together to fight like the injustices and stuff.
Yeah, it's such a striking and disturbing image to start on with those 4 little girls in the church. Yeah. Because it combines, it was in the church, right? It was in the church. Yeah. But because it combines that. It combines the terms of innocence on top of a supposedly holy place, right? Mm-hmm. The destruction of innocent children inside what's supposed to be a place of worship and of peace. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the most like disturbingly offensive, evil thing that anyone can do. Mm-hmm. It's just evil. So opening up with that shows you like this is how far people were willing to go to fulfill their racist desires. Like, it's something that's super deep as far as like how, destructive and how evil this moment was in the country. Mm-hmm. And specifically in this area of the U.S. I mean, there was a ton of people there that were just like hard freaking core. Mm-hmm. And we see it in this movie. But what I like about this movie as well is the fact that you mentioned that Oprah thing. That to me is so powerful because it shows how there was always a way to find a loophole, to find some way to bring an African-American person down. Mm-hmm. There was always a way, and they would always find that loophole no matter what. They always fought against the federal government to make sure that they don't have to follow the rules that they were trying to put into the United States, because that's what the U.S. federal government was trying to do. And the state government for Alabama specifically, and that governor, remember that governor? What was that guy's name again?
I know you're talking
You know
about.
who I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I can't think of it.
And how like obsessed he was with like keeping the freaking African American people down.
George Wallace, I think.
George
right?
Wallace, yeah. And he was just addicted to that. It was almost like a drug to him.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's what this moment was, and that's why Martin Luther King specifically took his movement to that location and took it in a very
faced it head on
in a very pragmatic way, using nonviolent protest, using tons of people, using local groups, using young people, using these were all these moves and strategies that Martin Luther King used were low-key genius, man. Like, this was some genius level stuff as far as like how to make a movement. Like you've talked about this before, as far as like finding a leader, finding the right time, finding the right place, expanding your audience, expanding your boundaries, bringing in more people. How do you reach more people? All this stuff is like movement, leadership, revolution 101. Like, this is the type of stuff that you write books about as far as making a movement and making revolutions. And Martin Luther King was following it to the T. And like, that's what's so good about this movie, is that you see not only his personal life, but also his strategy as far as using that. And I love that kind of stuff. I love finding out about the details of it.
Yeah, and they do a good job of incorporating the entire team that's behind him, too. I mean, Loretta Scott King, his wife, but also just the people, Tessa Thompson in this movie, Andre Holland, I believe, is also in this as well. Common stars in it and wrote the third rap song to ever win Best Original Song at the Academy Awards, Glory, with John Legend. And there's, I mean, it's a stat cast. The homeboy who's plays the oldest son, and Empire is also in this movie. Cuba Gooding Jr. pops up. I didn't even know Cuba Gooding Jr. is still alive. But he's in this. It's a lot. It's a really
who's a big homie who pops up in a bunch of movies. This guy. I see him everywhere, man. No, it's not him. This guy. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wendell Pierce.
He's in freaking everything.
Yeah. He's in The Wire. He normally plays like the cop characters.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about him when we talked about Spike Lee, man.
That's
I feel
right.
really bad
he's
about
in a lot
that.
of Spike Lee movies.
Yeah.
he's in a ton of Spike Lee.
He has my favorite line in 25th Hour, where he's like, I don't know, I can't remember the exact line, but it's that whole scene in 25th Hour where they're searching his apartment, and like they find like the coke in Edward Norton's thing. He's like, whooshy, like he does the whole Wire thing, but he does it there, and then he does it like, even, I don't know, he does it funnier. But he has like a whole.
He's great.
Yeah, he's
a great actor.
But he's good in this too. And
speaking of the cast, speaking of emotional moments too with the cast, I want
Keith
to.
Stanfield, I'm sorry.
That's what I was about to say. This movie has one of the most difficult emotional scenes that Dude, I'm telling you, man. This one in Fruitvale Station is up there as far as like that deep emotional scene. Is when Lakeith Stanfield's character, man. Yeah. That scene as far as like the mother and seeing the body and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That is just. Jesus Christ. I think I actually cried. And I don't cry in any movie. Really? Yeah, I don't cry. Like, I'm not a crier. Like, some guys are criers. I think I actually did cry when I saw, like, a verge of tears as far as, like, if you get me to cry, I had some deep shit, bro. Yeah, like, that was hardcore. Like, the fact it's not even, like, a son losing a father, or a father or a son losing a mother, which is devastating, but the devastation of a young man and the potential that you lose, and a mother losing that young man is just awful. And we saw that obviously in Fruitvale, that when I talked about that scene at the end, when I was like, dude, I'm getting emotional, bro. And I texted you, I was like, bro, I'm gonna cry right now. And I'm like texting you, RB3, I'm crying, bro. But that scene is so powerful, man. And it's just, that scene in general is just enough to get you just riled up, man. Like,
right,
and
it does get you riled up, and they follow that with the amazing speech that he gives at the church to speak to the people. And I think that's also something worth noting too. I don't know if you know this or not, but in making the movie of Selma, they couldn't use any of Martin Luther King's like real speeches. So like all of these were like originally written for this movie. I
Really?
think
They couldn't get the rights to that?
yeah,
Holy
I
crap.
think Spielberg had brought the rights for DreamWorks like Entertainment back in like 2009, and they're still holding on to them. So like when they're making this movie, Ava DuVernay, who I know that the credits say it's like Paul Webb who like wrote the script. Really Ava DuVernay rewrote like 95% of it, including all of the speeches. So they're all like original speeches.
That's
featured in
crazy.
there. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, let's talk about the scene in the movie where Martin Luther King spends time in jail, and it's left on kind of Coretta to take up the wheel and to take up the mantle, and how every time I talk to my dad, and this is a testament to my dad too, about Martin Luther King, because we're big fans of as far as a historical figure. Every time, dude, that I bring up Martin Luther King to my dad, he's like, "Don't forget about Coretta." Like he always does that to me, because he really feels like my dad's very passionate about Coretta King and how she had such a big hand in this movement, as much as Martin Luther King had. And this movie shows just a glimpse of that. What do you think of her character and how she's portrayed in this movie?
I think that's important too, and I think that's definitely a perspective that Ava brings to it. From being a black woman and and showing the contributions that black women had towards this movement, because all the male figures, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they get the big, they get the holidays, they get the movies and all that stuff, but it's really the people that are behind them that are doing a lot of the work too. So they really highlight that too, and I think. It's like I said in earlier, this movie addresses a lot of flaws of Martin Luther King as a person too. The whole thing with the affair, and I think it even speaks to a bigger point, the fact that the FBI was like actually tracking him the entire time. They were like it was they had a lot of the FBI, the CIA, like all these different organizations were kind of working, under the government, under government to try and belittle this figure, trying to belittle Martin Luther King and what he was trying to go for. They spied on him. They bugged his phones. There was I've read things of like them calling the houses with voice impersonators, like acting like Malcolm's like having sex with like other women, like all this like weird stuff that they're again they were trying to defame a movement that was pushing against their agenda. So it was even a bigger thing. But they do address his affairs, and I think in a really smart and subtle way, in that long conversation that he's having with his wife, and with like a lot of like long pauses and gaps, like to really get you to feel like the awkwardness, like the silence between these two people. But then ultimately, as a married couple, they reconcile with that and keep the movement pushing forward. So
yeah,
really
that's a big moment in the movie too, is the fact that they chose to address that, right? Because that's a choice. A lot of I've been thinking about that too, is that when you choose to talk about certain things, especially delicate things like a Martin Luther King affair, that's a very deliberate, expressive choice. You know that you're getting into some deep water, and you better know how to swim if you're going to get into deep water. Yeah. And Ava like balances that really well, like you said, with that great scene and that great realistic conversation that they have.
Yeah, and it's not, like I said, it's not judgmental. It's not like prosecuting him or like he's a bad man because he's he had an affair. It's really just showing the humanity behind this figure and the complexities that we put in our idols and everything. So it's really deep. There's a lot of really powerful things that are being said in this film, and I definitely think that's what they're going. The fact that they were able to take those kind of risks and go for it is essential.
Have you ever read the letters from Birmingham Jail? Have you read that?
Yeah.
The letters from
Yeah.
Because I've read it. I read it back in college. I haven't read them since college, but. Isn't that just the craziest stuff? Like, I don't know. For me personally, like I remember reading that, and I remember hearing it too, where someone actually read them out loud, and thinking to myself, like, holy crap, that's like next. We talked about it when we talked about Spike Lee and Malcolm X, where Malcolm X had these two, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, are two of the greatest speakers of all time. I'm talking all time, as far as speakers, as far as talented, truly like God-given talent, like amazing talented speakers. But they both had kind of a different approach to language and to words and to the kinds of expressions that you use when you speak, right? I mean, they're both kind of preachers. Martin Luther King is a preacher. That's literally what his job was beforehand. And Malcolm X is what Minister Malcolm, right? Is what they call him because he's a minister in the Muslim church. But at the same time, they both have a different approach to preaching and to communicating messages. And when I read those letters, I remember thinking to myself, like, man, that is not a speaker. That is a poet. Like that, Martin Luther King was a poet as far as expressing himself in metaphors and in similes and in analogies and in moments and in examples that like just descriptive, incredible detail that the greatest authors in the world will read that and think it's from, an amazing author, but it's actually from, a preacher. Right. That to me is like a huge testimony that I feel like this movie captures really well is the amazing speaking ability and his way with words that is just so like captivating because that's kind of what you need in a movement, man. I mean, you need someone who's just sucks you in with the way he speaks and how he uses language, right? That to me is like so powerful because it can kind of like lure you in and make you believe what he is saying because he's just so incredibly powerful with the English language.
Yeah, and I think that's another testament to Ava and her way of writing those speeches, rewriting those speeches, and also to David Oyelowo's performance in this film, the way he delivers all of that stuff. I mean, he embodies like the essence, the rhythm. I know they both said they listened to like a lot of his speeches over and over again to kind of capture the rhythm, the style, all of that of the way he spoke, the way his voice increments, like the subtleties of it, and they did it really well.
Let's do two more things before we move on. First thing I want to say is on that note, one of the biggest, I was thinking about this as I watched Wrinkle in Time because I was thinking about Ava, was the biggest Oscar snub I think in like recent memory is David Oyelowo for Selma. How the heck was he not nominated for? How the heck did he not win for Best Actor? I mean, back me up, man. Is that not one of the most transformative performances? I mean, he literally embodied the character of Martin Luther King. Yeah. Like that was Martin Luther King. I'm still convinced that was him. As far as like just the way he expressed himself, the way he moved, his body, his language, his eyes, his everything. I was just like, holy freaking crap. That's an Oscar-winning performance if I've ever seen one. Back me up on that, man. I mean, is that not like incredibly? That's a huge snub.
No, I mean that's
almost like an offensive snub.
no, I mean it really is.
I would say like it's a snub to not let him win, but not even nominate him. That's like a travesty.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunately that's that was the first year of the Oscars So White campaign starting to kick off. Because there is, and which is weird because this movie was nominated for only Best Picture and Best Original Song,
and that's it.
That's
crazy, man.
But I definitely think, I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, you could have nominated David. I mean, listen, they're not the Academy, and I've said this from time to time, but it's worth repeating. They're not like really interested in rewarding African American actors who are playing parts that are not slaves, not help, not maids. Disparage people. If whenever there's a movie about a positive figure like Malcolm X, of course Denzel's not going to win for that. He's going to win where he plays the corrupt police officer. With a movie like this with David Oyelowo playing Martin Luther King, of course that's not going to get nominated. But Chiwetel Ejiofor in 12 Years a Slave, give him that, give that Best Picture. And of course, I mean, 12 Years a Slave is a fantastic movie, and Chiwetel Ejiofor is amazing in it. But that being said, you can see the problem here. There's a pattern. There's a very clear, problematic thing, and they just, again, you go a whole list of black actors, Halle Berry, and it's like all the most problematic, most self-indulgent. Meanwhile, if you're like, Colin Firth and you play like King, Louis, whatever, in the King's Speech, and you can win Best Actor for that. It's just you know what I mean. Like there's
That is one of the weirdest. I can't lie. That is one of the weirdest snubs. It's just weird. I just find it odd, almost
Yeah.
as if like the only explanation you would have for not nominating him is that you didn't like no one
See
saw the movie.
Yeah.
That's the only other explanation. Because to me, it's like if you saw that, if anyone saw that, I don't care if you're the oldest Oscar voter ever, you would be like, all right. I mean, I can't deny that stuff. That's just real shit.
I think it was even, if not the highest grossing, one of the highest grossing Best Picture nominees of that year.
And it's crazy because that's the same year that no offense, and I keep bringing this up, but that it was a controversy because let's face it, he was good, but damn, he was not even close to everyone else. Bradley Cooper for American Sniper. Bradley Cooper was good in American Sniper. Fine. But Jesus Christ, David Oyelowo became Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal was the creature of Nightcrawler.
Yeah, Lou Bloom.
he became
Lou Bloom, by the way, Lou Bloom. You're always
man.
surfing in our comment sections, man.
Yeah.
Respect to Lou Bloom in the comments.
I mean he became Lou, man. I mean
Yeah.
that was crazy. And David Oyelowo became
And
Martin Luther King, but they were like, nah, let's give it to the sniper guy. And I'm like, I get it, it's cool, but I'm like, nah, man, just because he lifted weights for like a few scenes, I'm like, I mean, he got big and then he had a country accent.
Yeah,
but
I don't.
was like,
Yeah,
come
I don't
on,
get that
man.
one. I don't get
Come
that
on.
one. But yeah, no.
But that's my last thought because I feel like it should be said that this will go down in history, in my opinion, as one of the biggest Oscar snubs ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
No, I mean, no doubt. I mean, it had 99% Rotten Tomatoes, if I'm not mistaken, 7.5 on IMDb, and the cinema score is an A+. So audiences were definitely behind this movie. The fact that Ava DuVernay couldn't get credit for the screenplay writing on this is unacceptable. Just shows you the problems that come in like contracts and WGAs and all that kind of stuff. So it's a shame she wasn't nominated for writing. Shame she wasn't nominated for directing. And Bradford Young doing the cinematography for this movie. I mean, those incredible those incredible like slow motion shots, like on the bridge, where the police on the horses are fighting people and bringing not fighting people, but yeah, like literally fighting people, like beating people down. You know what I mean? Like as they're standing there non-violently trying to hold the fort down. Just those brutal images of those beatings, and it's all around. And those massive like wide shots they would cut to with a little bit of haze on the top on the bottom of each frame, and that specific type of lens they used for those cameras. The editing in this movie was really well done. The pacing was strong. It didn't like linger on past this point.
I'm such a pacing fanatic that you're right. The pacing was phenomenal in this movie.
Yeah, and just ending on that like that last speech, that like powerful rousing celebration of an accomplishment. And I know this movie came under a lot of controversy when it came out because of its portrayal of Lyndon B. Johnson.
That's right. That's right. I remember
as a political figure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I it's hard to say, man, because I wasn't there. I'm not a Lyndon B. Johnson rep or like a Lyndon B. Johnson fan. But yeah, it is a little bit interesting the way that you can make an argument that Ava might have gone a little too hard on Lyndon. I know that I watched it with my dad and he was like, well, I thought Lyndon was a little more, woke than that. But I guess he wasn't. I don't know.
Well, I mean, listen, presidents as political figures don't really have that much power to begin with.
Sure.
But he could have done more to aid the effort that Martin Luther King was putting in. So I think there's both. I mean, both sides of the coin is what is what's represented. But I think definitely from the side of Martin Luther King, there wasn't enough support from the government. There wasn't, and we have like the FBI and the CIA trailing you 24/7. Fake phone calls. Fake terrorist threats, real terrorist threats with no protection from the government or the police or whatnot. It's just is unfortunate, and that's ultimately he was assassinated too. So it's just like there should have been more of an effort put behind what King was doing, particularly by the president, by a lot of the United States government. So I definitely think that's one of the big problems with. But then you look at, that's the difference in perspective, right? You look at this compared to that like Bryan Cranston, Anthony Mackie HBO film, all the way.
I didn't see that.
Called.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this this one paints a very negative portrayal of Lyndon B. Johnson. The other one paints a very like positive, upright, but directed by Jay Roach,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like it's again difference of perspective,
Sure.
Between between cultures, but it's definitely, I think that's definitely a note worth pointing out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Once again, guys, as we close out Selma, one of the most underappreciated great movies. I love it. So.